Welcome to Vice Grip Garage. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to build a 350 on a budget with crap tools in your garage for less than $1,500 that'll blow your neighbor's doors off. To make it even more difficult, I'm going to use a blown up 350 out of a derby car, see if we can do it with that one. And then in a future episode, I'm going to throw it in the 57 Chevy right here in the garage. We'll go test on it a little bit and see what she can do. Let me dig her out and might as well get started. Okay, so here's our foundation. This is a small block Chevy. It's a 350. This is a 3970014 block. Casting numbers back here. You know, is it worth building a 2-bolt or should I build a 4-bolt? I'm going to tell you it doesn't really matter to me personally. I've built a lot of pretty cool motors that are a 2-bolt. And unless you're spending all of your time above 6,000 RPM, I wouldn't really worry about it personally. When I bought this motor, I got everything for $200. It was a complete motor. It barely ran, but the reason I purchased it, it was complete. I knew that it ran, and it was a pretty good deal for $200. So what I do, buy the block. I take the junk smog heads. I sell them for about $50. Okay. Cast iron intake. You could sell it if you get a good casting number. Their IMCA mod guys like them. Some other people might like them. Typically, I'll just take a block like this, and I'll use a wire wheel and some carb or brake cleaner, and I'll just scrape all the dirt off of it and clean it up, and I'll start assembly there. I don't really care what they look like. However, I have plans to sell this, so I kind of want to do this one right. I took this and had it magnafluxed. While it was there, I had them hone it. I had them put freeze plugs in it. I had them drill the oil passages, and I got it back all nice and clean. Honing yourself, you can get a dingle ball hone. You know, they're $40, $50. You can do it yourself. It's easy, trust me, okay? I opted to go this way. Little over $200, guys. Not bad to get this thing clean, honed, put together, ready to rock. I would have had $70, $80 in the parts. Actually more than that with the plugs. So it worked out. Again, you don't have to do that. So with the block and the way it sits right now, I've got about $400 in it. We're going to put the stock crank back in this thing. I'm going to show you really quick right now how I quickly prep and polish my own cranks. We'll inspect it, make sure it's good. We'll clean it up, polish it, pop it back in this thing. Then we'll do camshaft. I got a really cheap, awesome cam I'm going to show you guys. And then we'll start assembly from there. So you're going to figure out pretty quickly that there's two things that I use way too much of. You know that painter, the Happy Tree painter, where he has a really nice painting and he says, I'm going to put a little tree right here. I'm kind of like that with PB Blaster and spray paint. Now that we've got the crank cleaned up and I see this nice clean block sitting here, I have to spray paint it. I mean, there's just no way that I'm going to sleep tonight until this is painted. So tape off the cylinder walls, tape off the lifter valleys, make sure you don't get any on the cam bearings, give her a coat. Okay, so here's the current state of the Derby 350 and the super special proprietary bake oven. We'll probably put 2 or 3 more coats on it. Here's the parts from the disassembly. I just blow them off wherever. Inspect the oil pan when you pull them apart. Look for parts and pieces, metal shavings, that's okay. You want to look for any big chunks. This one had an obvious blown head gasket and a couple other issues I'll cover in a second. Now, if you're not going to take photographs, unless you have a lot of experience, it's wise to lay out your parts like this so when it comes time for reassembly, it's much easier and you know where everything goes in the orientation of it. I always work front to back. So I've got my main caps and bearings front to back all the way to the oil, and then I've got my pistons front to back. And you have to remember during disassembly, engine's upside down, so this is actually number 1. The orientation of the push rods and caps is paramount with a Chevy. One's a square edge, one's a rounded edge. You've got to get those correct on the crank. GM pistons always have a dot or a star, as you can clearly see right here. That always faces forward. As I was showing you, that blown head gasket, that same piston has a stuck compression ring, second ring down. That's froze. And the other big killer on this engine here, this cam lobe right here is normal. Nothing wrong with that. The one below that my thumb's on right now is wiped. So when we do reassembly on this, we're going to talk about wiping cam lobes, or actually doing everything we can do to avoid wiping a cam lobe. That's exactly what I'm talking about when we get to that part. We're going to start with the crankshaft, and I'll show you guys how I clean mine up really quick. Of course, you could take it to a shop, but that costs money. So for about one bottle, you can get all the stuff that you need to clean these up fairly good. So I'm going to show you how I do that really quick. Pretty normal wear. I mean, it's been heated quite a bit. Of course, we know this came out of a derby car. So this is what I wanted to take care of. I'm going to move my light over here. See these scratches? That one right there, that's actually fairly deep now that I'm looking at it under the light. This one will come out pretty good. Fairly typical there. But we just want to get some of these scratches out, get them polished and clean, make sure the oil journals are nice and clean. Here's some that I've already started. These here, and you can, you know, based on these two, you can clearly see the difference. These have a very nice smooth finish to them, and there's no deep scratches as compared to these here. So what you need is a super expert precision crankshaft holder like that. You're going to need some sort of lubricant, spit, motor oil, 30 weight, whatever. I like this because I put it on everything. Some sort of metal polish. I use this because it's like less than $2. Carb cleaner, just because. I like to have gas laying around because I like the smell. You need a scissors, some 400 grit wet sandpaper, and a shoelace. I'm going to flip this up, so we'll start on this one. Cut your sandpaper to approximately the width. This one's a little wide, like so. Take your carb cleaner, make sure there's not any chunks or anything on there. Soak your sandpaper nice and good. Soak that down, make sure it's lubricated. Drape this over there, spin this around. I like to get my seam on the top because I can hold it better. Throw your shoelace over it. Keep it flat. Bring it around. Grab either end of your shoelace. Keep a little bit of pressure on it. And go to town. As far as how long you do this, you guys will figure it out. Depends on how deep your grooves are. So I'm going to do this for a while, then I'll check back in with you. Here's what I got. You can see clearly, looks much different as compared to where we were at. So now we're in, put a little polish on her. Take some of your El Cheapo Ace Hardware bull crap or Walmart or whatever. Throw it on here. Do one of these things with the stuff and thing. Get a piece of microfiber towel and cut it in a strip. Throw it around. Just go to town. And you'll actually feel this, and I can hear it. You can hear it's kind of grainy from the sanding. And when you get this polished out pretty good, that sound will kind of dissipate and it'll feel, I don't know how to explain it, fast or slick. That's good enough. So I'm going to do this for a few minutes, and that's about it, guys. Okay, blocks painted and dry, so we're going to continue assembly. I picked up this Engine Tech set off eBay, looks something like this. I've used this exact kit probably half a dozen times now. Works really well. It's cheap, 70 bucks. Gets you this whole kit. Comes with your rings. These are cast rings, not moly. Comes with your main bearings, okay? And then it comes with your rod bearings, of course, here. And then this bottom box has every single gasket you're gonna need, including the rear main. So it's, you know, pretty darn good deal. If you were to add up all the gaskets alone, you know, on a Felpro, for example, you're gonna be much higher cost. Another thing you're gonna want as we start to put this together is some engine assembly lube. This is what I use. Works really good. You can pick it up at Napa, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, pretty much everywhere. And I used to buy comp cams a lot, so I ended up with a bunch of these bottles. So I'm going to use this because it's cheap. You don't have to. You can go ahead and use regular engine assembly lube. But when we start putting in the crank and everything else, I go crazy with the lube, okay? The first 10-15 seconds of motor startup, you're either going to be really happy or it's going to go very wrong. And one of the ways to prevent the very wrong is just making sure that everything is absolutely lubed as much as possible. So first thing we're going to do is drop the crank in and we'll start from there. I like to get some lube in my farthest cam bearing and my second farthest cam bearing. Once that crank's in, we're not going to be able to reach in there. I guess my theory is as we slide this camshaft in, each journal it passes through is wiping some of that lubricant off. So I like to just apply some directly to the bearing here and here. So as that comes in, it's going to pick up more lube when it sets. The other thing that, I don't know if we're going to be able to see this or not. Oh, you can. See right down through there, we can actually see that this oil journal is coming through the cam bearing. So we just want to go through these and just triple check before assembly that all of these cam bearings are going to get oil. We're going to drop the bearings in, drop the rear main seal, drop the crank in. Make sure none of your bearings have rotated. Make sure your rear main seal hasn't rotated. And this should turn nice and easy, but we don't want to keep spinning it because we got that lube sitting in there. And we want to retain that when we do our rocker arms. So just make sure it's sitting here nice and it just moves nice and easy, okay? That's it. Main caps are easy. They've got an arrow on them. Arrow faces forward. They've got a tooth in it, a groove. These just simply fit in that space. Slide it in. Make sure you're flush. Lube. All right. Arrow forward. I'm just going to run these down finger tight. Then we'll come back and I'll show you the torque pattern, okay? I'm going to snug all these down. Then I'm going to come back and go to 50 foot-pounds inside out. And then I'm going to come back and do 70 foot-pounds. On 4-bolt mains, I believe the outer caps are 65 foot-pounds. 2-bolted 70 all the way through. This is where you'd use a plastic gauge. And you'd plastic gauge all of your clearances after you torque it down. I'm already going to be doing that here. I'm not going to show you how, because there's 348,000 YouTube videos already on how to do that. Once you get it torqued, obviously you can give the crank a little twist, make sure everything's going good. As we start putting the pistons in, we'll be checking the brake foot-pounds off the crank snout here. So we're on the rings. I've already taken my pistons, and I gave them a gasoline bath. Used a soft wire brush, cleaned them up as good as I could. I'm taking one of your old piston rings, break it, use this and work it around the piston if you've got some carbon buildup. Work it around your piston, get it nice and clean. Be sure to put them, I got them on my workbench here. I just transferred them from how I had them laying. Same way up top here. I went with cast rings. I like cast rings. They're more forgiving. They break in easier. Obviously, you know, your ring choice is up to you in your particular build. Molle has its advantages, but you have to keep in mind if you want to go with Molle rings, there's different ways that you have to hone and otherwise. So also be sure when you're ordering your rebuild kit that you're getting the proper ring size and you're not getting ones that are called file fit or fit to file or whatever. Those you actually have to file the rings, and there's a whole process you have to go through for the proper ring clearance end to end. Also, if you're planning on bolting on an eBay turbo or some sort of supercharger, you're going to have high heat in the piston cylinder walls. You're going to want to gap your rings a little bit differently too, so keep that in mind. Some of these kits, very important. Factory GM rings, they have this little dot. I don't think you're going to be able to see. Oh, maybe right there. Dot goes up. That's because it's a beveled ring. It's very important you get the dot up. Some kits have 2 dots for the bottom set, 1 dot for the top. Just pay attention. You know, you can maybe even read these thingamajiggers. We're going to go ahead and start ringing these up. Alright, we've got all the rings on the pistons, and I just wanted to spend a second on clocking rings. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is something that's really overcomplicated on the internet. I googled it the other day just out of curiosity's sake, and I mean, I saw diagrams and pictures and lines and charts and degrees, and I don't know, maybe my way is wrong, but it seems to be awfully easy. And all I do is this. Here's the center of the piston. We know that the dot is the front. I'm going to look at my compression rings. I'm going to make sure my top one's at 2 o'clock. I'm going to make sure my bottom one's at 10 o'clock. All I'm going to do is spin the piston around. I'm going to make sure my top oil ring is at 2 o'clock. My bottom oil ring is at 10 o'clock. And my wavy ring is at 12 o'clock. That's it. You're done. Ready to drop in the motor. Don't overcomplicate it. 10 and 2, spin it. 10 and 2, ready to go. So, ready to put bearings in, lube them up, drop them in. Okay, I'm on my last piston here, and I'll just show you how easy this is. I push it out until the piston wings are just hanging out a little bit. Guide it in nice. Set it in, grab my persuader. That easy. Now I'm just going to reach down here. I've got the crank on the downstroke, so then I'm going to guide it all the way down to the crank. Get kind of gentle. Home. Bing bang, zing, boom, done. Oil pumps on. Melling, high volume. Yes, we're doing a budget build, but why would we not just go to a high volume? Plus, look at the pump shafts. Let me get closer. Here's a factory one. It's got this cheap little plastic cap that sits on here that always breaks. Like always. Here's Mellings. Much, much, much better. Now we're going to flip it over and we'll start the cam. It is officially cam time. There's a whole lot that could be said about camshafts, so I'm not gonna bore you with my preaching. But what I can help you with is a really, really cheap cam that I really like. Actually, I have them in 2 of my current vehicles, but I've probably put 10 of these in. If you like the way that a Comp Cam's Big Mother Thumper or whatever it is sounds, or the Howard's Big Daddy Rattler cam, or any of those really aggressive profiles, but they perform really good on the street, This is what this is going to do for you. And this is a Summit Racing cam. And I believe the part number is 1178. It's a 450 lift, 274 duration on a 106 LSA. The cam by itself is like 70 bucks. I picked up the cam and matching lifter set for 10 bottles of black velvet, 120 bucks. I mean, you can't beat that in my opinion. I'm going to show you how I insert this. I actually just start, I'll get through the first two journals. I'll lube all this up really good. Then I'm going to let this hang out of the block. Then I'll lube the next two. Then I'll move it forward. Then I'll lube the final half. That way you don't have a cam that's fully lubed and you're, getting it all messy and wiping a lot of it off. And remember, I've already put cam lube on my farthest two journals in the block. So as this is passing through and getting some of that wiped off, it's going to end up coming in contact once it gets fully seated. Just a reminder, depending on what distributor you're running, pay attention to the distributor gear on this so you don't destroy that. Long bolt. Just put this through. Be careful with the threads. You can use this as a handle. Unless you already have one, don't go buy the tool just to put a cam in. Alright, we're going to put a Comp Cams True Double Roller Chain set in here. Big dollar splurge. Factory sets are 35, 40 bucks. This was $50. To get this in, I just put the gear on the cam itself, rotate it until the dot here is close to the dot on the top. Then what you got to kind of do is eyeball it, like so. Get that chain hooked on, top gear goes on the peg, and you're done. Then all you have to do is just verify that you've got dot to dot here. We're getting ready to put the heads on here. And I promised you a budget build, so I'm going to keep my word. Now, if you're truly on a bare bones budget, throw the old smog heads on. Don't worry about it. Save up some money. Upgrade somewhere down the line. But keep in mind, the carburetor, the intake, the headers, they're not really going to do much for you. You'll gain some horsepower, but all these motors are air pumps. You guys know that as much as I do. So it's all going to come down to the heads. Knowing that I want to put this motor in something that I'm going to sell, these are Orange Chicken Lo Mein Special from eBay. They literally don't have a name. Nothing. But 20216, 190 runners, and these are 600 high lift valves, and this came completely assembled. Shipped to my door, just over 500 bucks. Heads are on, they're all torqued up. Need an oil pan and a timing cover, so we're going to use the factory set. I've got those soaking in the parts washer, which for me is my son's sled, and we just fill that up with gas and scrub them up, and he's over here behind me cleaning them up right now. We'll hit it with some 400 sandpaper, paint it really fast, throw those on. Alright, it's time to figure out what kind of fuel coffee can. I just blew my back out into like 16 pieces. Like I was saying, there's no reason you can't use a good old Quadra-Junk. These are actually pretty decent carburetors. They can be tuned. They'll work if you're on a really tight budget. Also, if you have a 700 R4 and cruise control, you don't want to deal with all the geometry and cables and linky-hoos. This is easy just to retain a Quadra-Jet and bolt it on. If you want a little more performance, these here Edelbrocks, these are dime a dozen. There's like 114 billion of these all over the interwebs and the Google machine. This one I got for 50 bucks. Look at the junk in here. This is a double pumper Holly. I like these because they're pretty simple to tune. I'm going to use the completely wrong intake for this build, which is going to be this Y-end single plane intake. Bad, wrong, good intake, just not even close to right for this build. What would probably be more proper for this motor would be like a dual plane Edelbrock air gap or one of the Ching Pao knockoff ones. I had to order in a bunch of parts, so they're finally here, so we're ready to go ahead and finish this up. I got everything I need to get this finished. So first thing you might notice, I got some headers on here. Long story short, Fred's drag racer had a wall of headers. He actually had a set for a Tri-5. After about 5 or 6 beers, I took these home for $100, and they're Hooker Super Comps, so I got a really good deal on them. Of course, I sanded them down and spray painted them. And then I had to figure out my push rod length and my rocker arm geometry, the old geometry. Boy, is that not fun, but it has to be done. Not always, but more often than not, if you move to a performance head, especially if it's aluminum, your push rod length is probably going to change depending on your cam lift, depending on the ratio of your rocker. If you go over the factory 1.5 in small block Chevy, that's also going to affect your push rod length. So on the pumped up lifter, you just slide this in the motor, adjust it to where you think you need it. Make sure if you're running guide plates, those are installed because those are about an 1/8 inch thick. Make sure your screw and rocker stud is all the way tight. Plop your rocker on. Roll the motor over a few times. I use nail polish or a marker on the valve stem tip. And you're looking for an even wear path right down that valve stem. So once you get all that figured out, that's the hard part, is the push rod length. Probably going to catch a lot of flack for this, but this is a true budget build. We're going to reuse the old factory 1.5 stamped steel rocker arm. You remember our spray painted intake? Boom. eBay. Distributor, complete, brand new. Comes with wires, $62. Hey, don't forget your distributor base gasket. I've done that a couple times and thought I lost the rear main seal. Stupid. I did end up going with the Edelbrock. Cleaned up really nice. Already had one of these diagramical engineering kits for it. So I figured, why spend more money? I'll be able to tune this and get it going. eBay, $26. These were about $30 with shipping. They were really rusty. I hit them with these. Get the ones with the soap in it. Budget $350. Like most people can save up enough to pull this off. And I think it turned out pretty good. If it's a little bit out of your budget, guys, remember you don't have to go with the aluminum heads. You know, maybe consider just upgrading your valves a little bit if you're going to do a high lift cam. Otherwise, factory springs will take 450 lift, 475. I've done it. If you're going to go over 500, you might want to upgrade your springs, but sat on a valve cover. Anyway, guy wanted to bring her all the way back around for you. And got my high-tech digital receipt machine here, and if I'm using the calculator right, I come up with $1,547.28. So, hate to say it, but I blew the budget on her. But keep in mind, this is a fully dressed engine here, fellers. This isn't a short block or what have you. So, in fact, next weekend I'm going to drop her in the old 57 and go test on her. So, comment below. Let me know what you think, and hit the subscribe button wherever that is. Apparently that does something for me in the future. I really don't know what, but it sounds really important, so would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.